record, and I will hide floating meeting controls. Cool. All right, I think everything should be good. All right, hi everybody. Week 13. Woo! It's like a week or two left of the semester, and then you're on to finals week, and you're done with your first school year, or if it's your freshman year, or however many years you've been here. But you're almost done with the whole school year, so that's exciting. Some announcements. Homework 8 is technically due today. Very few of you have submitted it, so try to get it in. I know it's like not the utmost priority, but it is like useful for your future. So like you might as well just do it now so you have it. Remember, it's to LaTeX your CV. It's technically due right now, but we understand if it's taking some time. Also, you could drop homeworks if you want, but I recommend doing this one just to have it. It's like you're gonna need it anyway, so might as well just get it done. Homework 9 is already like uploaded. Like I just wanted to like put it up there so you can get a head start on it if you're into that. That's making your website, so that'll be due next Monday. Again, like these are kind of like super laid back, meant to be kind of fun. Make your website, make it look pretty, make your CV, make it just how you want it. But yeah, so homework 8 is due today, but you could still turn it in late. Prioritize working on your projects, but if you have time, I really recommend doing homework 8 and 9. And then yeah, homework 9 is your website. Final project deadlines are coming up soon. I hope we made that clear with the check-ins last week. Like it's coming up. Don't just like let it go by and then you start the project the night before. You're not going to get it done in time, I promise you, and you don't want to have nothing to show for. So please, please, please get working on that. Just remember the due date is going to be on the 25th. So that's like the Monday of the presentation week. We're going to present on Monday and Wednesday. So please, please try to get that done before then. More details will be available to you on Wednesday about what you need to submit. Everybody's going to need to make slides and a write-up, stuff like that, along with their final product, their end product. So yeah, that is the announcements for today. Is there any questions so far? Okay. If not, then we'll go ahead and get started with today's lecture. So today is more professional development, trying to better your places in academia in the future and make sure you have good opportunities. So we're going to talk a little bit about research today. And typically, we're going to start with like astronomy research, but really this is applicable to just about any field that's STEM based. This is like knowledge for like physics, astro, maybe chemistry, even biology, whatever you name it. This is a pretty good rule of thumb about how research works. So here's a nice little meme about what astronomy is like. Really, you're just coders. Everybody knows how to do Python now. So yay. Yeah, you're well prepared to do research in astronomy. Don't feel like you're not ready yet. You are definitely ready. Maybe just finish your like 7A, 7B, 7C classes. That might be a good thing to do, but really you could start today if you wanted and you would be fine. So the best way, like you're always going to feel like you're not ready to start research, but really you just got to kind of take the leap and do it. We'll talk a bit more about how research works just for everybody. So research is really just coding for, at least for astro and physics and a lot of other STEM based programs. It's not so much like sitting in a lab and like tweaking little things and like retaking data over and over and over again, like your normal lab classes. Some labs can be like that, typically more instrumentation based ones, but a lot of the data or a lot of the research going on today is heavily data oriented, crunching numbers, trying to analyze trends and pull something useful out of big experiments that people do. Science is becoming more and more collaborative every year, giant collaborations across countries, if not the entire globe, making huge petabytes amount of data. We took the image of the black hole, for example. That was an entire world organization that did that. Like CERN, particle accelerators, all sorts of stuff like that, completely international collaborations. You need to be able to crunch data numbers regardless of where you're from. So it's important to get familiar with coding, which all of you are doing. So yeah, basically research is just coding, at least at our level. So this is kind of like a roadmap to all of like the research process, the science research process. It always starts with like a scientific question or an idea. Typically, we don't come up with that as undergrads, but I mean, you could if you really were like had this brilliant idea, but typically we just don't have the knowledge yet. We're still learning, right? We're taking classes, so we don't have the know-how to ask what questions are not answered already, you know? So that's typically something for your advisors. But once you have a scientific question, you can go on to write a proposal to collect data with like a really fancy instrument. So you don't have to build one from scratch. That might be a telescope. That might be a proposal for the particle accelerators to collect data. That might be a proposal to on a supercomputer if you want to use really, really powerful machines to run your algorithms, whatever it may be. And then once you get access to that, you can collect your data and so on. Or you could just download public data sets. Satellites like telescopes or space observatories like Gaia, for example, are orbiting right now as we speak, collecting data on stars for the entire public to access. And you could literally go right now and download their data and start doing actual research with it. They're open source for a reason. The world is really smart when you have lots of minds working on different things and people come up with crazy ideas that nobody else thought of. So you can do plenty of research just by downloading public data sets. The third option, which is a bit less common for like astronomy, just because astronomy is such like a theory / data driven field, but in physics or maybe chemistry or even like biology, where you need to build instruments to like take your data, another route might be building new instruments and taking data with that. So if you want to measure something that can't be measured with anything right now, or you want to get a much higher resolution data set or whatever, you might need to build a new instrument to do that. Then once you collect your data through either of those three avenues, then you analyze your data and you write a research paper about it and you disseminate your knowledge to the rest of the world and they can critique it and try to reproduce it and do the whole scientific method. That's the whole point of doing science, is to kind of build our knowledge as a community and try to come to new understandings. So typically those research papers are refereed by other scientists, meaning they're peer reviewed, so that you don't just say bullshit and then say you discovered what dark energy is and then everybody's like, wow. No, they have to be like validated by other experts in the field to be published in a reputable journal, stuff like that. And then eventually once it's accepted and gone through heavy revision, then you can publish it and it'll be in a journal and you'll be like a published author, and it's pretty cool. So undergrads typically do this part that I highlighted here. We're not at the level to like write proposals and come up with our own scientific questions typically. Like I said, we just don't have all the knowledge yet. The people that are doing that have PhDs. They have an extra 6 years on you of classes and research in their specific field. We're not there yet. But what we can do is a lot of the aftermath. So once the proposals and the questions have been asked, typically we can do what our advisors ask us to do. That could be downloading public data, collecting the data, helping them build their instrument that they want to build, and then analyzing it and writing the paper. This is typically where we come in. And this is like going to be what you're going to be doing if you do research. And you might be wondering, what's the analysis like? Well, that's coding. That's like literally everything we've talked about this whole semester to build you up to be able to do the blue square and some of the purple square. We showed you a little bit about how to get public data from like Kaggle and like other like resources that Claire put on the document, stuff like that. You can pull data and pull it into a notebook and start analyzing it. But this is the most crucial key. If you can do this, you can get a job in industry making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. You can do research, you can do anything you want. This is like your ticket into a really nice life, understanding how to analyze data with coding. And that's basically what we started this whole path this semester. So if you did all the homeworks or you did most of them, you should be in a pretty good spot to be able to do this blue region. And then once you're done with that, you can help write papers and become an author and all that fun stuff. Is there any questions about that before I move on? Okay, if not. So in astrophysics specifically, this is a class offered through the astro department. So we kind of have to cater to the astro folks a little bit. This is where our specialties are. But it's going to look kind of similar in different fields as well. There's 3 different fields in astro. There's theoretical, observational, and instrumentation based. Theoretical is like pen and paper on a whiteboard, and you're like asking, what does it all mean? And you're like trying to write down your equations and all that good stuff. Maybe simulating stuff on a computer. We kind of talked about numerical simulations. They do that to a much more extreme level with those equations that they come up with. The observational realm is more like, collecting data, collecting data with telescopes that are already built for you by big organizations and whatnot, and getting into the nitty-gritty details of how you collect data and stuff like that. And there's instrumentation where you're actually building instruments that go on the telescopes that we use to observe and learn new things. There's overlap, heavy overlap in all of the fields. Theory usually goes a lot more with observation. The overlap between those two is really just data, like big data. So that's where y'all are going to shine really well with all the stuff we covered in this class, the data area, where you're just analyzing data, trying to find trends, fitting models to your data, maybe using like differentiation, different algorithms and whatnot to try and find trends in those models and stuff like that. And then the overlap between observational and instrumentation looks like that's like experimental cosmology. You might be like building instruments to try to measure something that's never been measured before, stuff like that. Pretty cool. Adaptive optics, if anybody's ever heard of that, trying to like warp your telescope mirrors to like match the atmospheric disturbances of the air and all that cool stuff. There's whole like fields. Anything NASA does is basically in between observational and instrumentation. All those telescopes, James Webb, that's like a huge area of research and stuff. So there's lots of overlap. Typically it goes like right to left or back and forth. Sometimes theorists come up with ideas and we set out to build new instruments to observe them. Sometimes we observe something and we need a theorist to explain it. Sometimes you observe something and it's crappy, so you need to build something that's better, re-observe it, and then you compare it with theory, all that good stuff. Research is this never-ending back and forth dance between these three categories. And of course, all tied together through data. We crunch the data, we try to figure things out from the data. So the first part of any project, you always pretty much start with like a literature review. So your advisor will tell you like, okay, let's do research on black hole dynamics. And you're like, okay, I don't know what anything that means. They'll like go to archive and read papers about it. So they'll usually give you a list of research papers to kind of review the surrounding literature about what you're researching. Typically, when you start a project, you're going to have no idea what it's about, and that's okay. Who has specific knowledge on like the fundamental string theory knowledge or whatever? Nobody has that like in the back of their head, just knowing it. So you need to read about stuff like that to learn it. I don't know anything about T-cell junctions and whatnot in biology, but if I read enough papers about it and I had a bit of background from my classes, then yeah, I could probably understand the papers after a while. And when you discuss with your advisor about what it means, you tend to get a lot better understanding. So you always have to do literature reviews. And the places we go to get the literature is arXiv and NASA's ADS system. I think we've briefly touched on this earlier in the semester, but these are the places you go. arXiv is a preprint service. So this is like technically not peer-reviewed papers. So anybody could put anything on the arXiv and it could look like a real paper, but it could be completely false. Yeah, April Fool's jokes. It's like a common thing in the science communities to like write fake papers for like April Fools that are really funny, but like super nerdy. Like imagine taking the time to write like a 10-page research paper, like completely as a joke. I couldn't be me. But anyway, this is like preprints for papers and whatnot. So if like a new discovery just dropped and you want to see like that, you want to see the publication, you want to see the data before it's published in like a journal, which could take months or whatever, you go there and you look at it. In fact, like a common practice for like professors and postdocs who are like at the top of their game in their research, they typically subscribe to like the arXiv and they just read through papers every day. So they like look through all the new papers that came out every day in their field. And that could be a really good way to like build up your like knowledge of a field, but that is not required for undergrads by any stretch of the imagination. Research papers can be very difficult to read. Typically, you just break it up into little chunks. You read like the abstract and then maybe look at the pictures and look at the conclusion and you're done. That's all you do. You don't read the heavy 20 pages. That's too much. We don't do that. You just need the gist of the paper and that's pretty much all you need. And the plot should be able to tell you the whole story of the paper without even reading anything else. And there's lots of different topics. It's not just astronomy on there. There's an archive for biology, an archive for chemistry, an archive for like specific fields in physics and astro, math. It's all there. It's a really cool service. And then NASA's ADS, Astrophysics Data System, is really great for research in astro. It has all published and preprint papers. So if you want to find like published sources for your citations in your papers you're writing, that's the place you go. And you can customize your search to your needs. You can download bibliography files that you can automatically format into your LaTeX, so you never have to write a citation by hand or be caught dead writing an MLA format ever again. All astronomers use this. These two are like, if you ever want to read research papers, you go to these two websites. Is there any questions about that so far? Okay, then we'll move on. So you might be wondering, how do you do this part? Collecting data, download public data, and build new instruments. Well, I can't teach you how to build a new instrument, but downloading public data and collecting data is something we can teach you. We kind of discussed it briefly earlier, but like in like the like documents we gave you for your final projects, but we're just gonna kind of go over it a little bit more. So there's a couple different ways. This is just a small subset of all the different possible options. Some common astrophysical data sources: Vizier, Simbad, Gaia. These are all different surveys. Vizier is like a giant catalog of tons of papers and everything in the astronomy field. A little hard and wonky to get used to using, but it has all the data. Simbad is another thing like Vizier, just like a lot of data. It's like a huge database for astronomy. You could give it like a coordinate to an object you want to look at, you pull the data, you can analyze that data. And then Gaia is like a satellite that's doing like astrometry, which is like measurements of like stars and parallaxes and all sorts of stuff. If that doesn't mean anything to you, that's totally okay if you're not an astro person. But if you are an astro person, this is a really good place to go for your astro data. And then you can also get your own data by like using AstroPy query, and you can like do a whole search that way. But these are just a couple like examples. You can go to Kaggle if you want to just do data science. There's really, you can just Google big data. You could go to like Uber, you could like download Uber's data. Typically, if you go to like whatever like you're looking for, like Spotify, Uber, or whatever, and like space data, and then you click on like API or something, you can like read through their tutorial on how to pull data. So if you really wanted to, you can get access to all of Spotify's database and pull all their sound files if you wanted to. And you just have to apply for a key, and they usually give it to you if you're just saying you're working on a coding project. It's pretty cool what you can do with data and how easy it is to really access it. It's not that hard if you just go looking for it. And of course, you just load it into a notebook. Typically, it might be like in a CSV file, which we worked with. It might be in a text file. It might be in, I don't know, HDF5 or FITS or something. But we've kind of seen those files around. Maybe not HDF5, but we've definitely seen FITS and we've seen CSVs and text files. So you should be pretty prepared to take any data sets that are on the web. But yeah, so you can pull them in and start working with them. These are just a couple examples, not everything. A much more complete list is on the like Claire's guide for like all the places to get data, and at least in the context of astronomy. Yeah. So that's real data acquisition. You could also get data from simulations. So maybe you want to run your own simulations and compare it to real data. Going back to like our simulations lecture. This is like code that you can either write yourself and run it. Usually that's a much smaller scale version, typically really simple. We did a lecture on how to run simulations. If you go back a couple lectures, if you weren't there, we talked about how to write a video game and how to do simulations, and it was really cool. So you could do that, but typically the kind of real science questions you want to ask need to be like, you need to have lots more complicated equations that are really hard to do from scratch. So you usually resort to pre-made codes that people have built that are written in different languages that are much faster than Python, so they can do lots of computations really quickly. Examples of this might be like Mesa, which is like an open source like simulation code to run simulations of stars. If you want to like model a star and like evolve it through time and watch it become a star from a gas cloud and then die into a supernova, you can see all of that happen. With that, it's like, this is like a really low resolution plot of some cool physics stuff. anybody's interested in stellar like astrophysics, this is your tool. You'll see it when you take Astro 160. You won't use it to like run your own simulations, but you can download data that's run using that simulation code. Athena++ is like 3D magnetohydrodynamics. It's what makes these really pretty like swirly color map images like this one, and not the black hole, but that like red one. And red, that's like a different fluid. This one maybe even, I think that's like a rotational instability and like a galaxy forming and stuff. Pretty cool stuff you can do. And those simulate like all of the fluid dynamics equations, and like you could even have general relativity, and it could solve like 30 equations simultaneously or some crazy shit, which would be a nightmare to run, like write from scratch on our own. So you can resort to like pre-built codes that are really complicated like that to do those really complex tasks. Typically, when you have those really complicated systems like black holes and like magnetic fields through fluids and stuff, then you can go run these simulations on supercomputers. This is usually an expensive thing to do, so your advisor has to apply for money from the government or from the university to pay for it, and then you can use it, which is pretty cool if you're interested in doing like theory-based, like computational astrophysics. That's typically what you'll be doing. You'll be using supercomputers. Again, with all the knowledge you learned how to code in here, very applicable to any other language / any other process you want to learn. And then lastly, you can download other people's simulation data. So you don't have to run these yourself. Maybe people run giant expensive simulations like of the entire universe, or like of stuff around black holes that are really, that take like years to run. Like it would take like a million years to run if you just ran on your laptop. They like, for example, this one called Illustrious TNG, I think they took like every supercomputer in Germany and like used it for an entire 6 months straight, like 100%, like probably killed like an entire Amazon forest worth of energy doing that. But like they basically simulated the whole universe on a computer, which is pretty cool, or at least like a lot of it. And then they like, it's got like lots of publications and stuff, and you could download that data right now if you wanted to, just going to their website and like pulling the huge terabytes of data that they have. And there's not more of this on Wednesday. I forgot to get rid of that bullet point, but we covered how to do simulations. So just going back to then, this is how that looks like in a real science context. So just to reiterate, we spent most of the semester doing this blue part, learning how to analyze data, working with NumPy arrays, working with pandas, data frames, fitting curves and models to data, all that good stuff. Plotting is another huge one. If you can visualize your data and put it into, or visualize your trends and data and put it into a paper, it's worth 1,000 words, and it's a lot easier to look at a graph than it is to read 20 pages. So this is all crucial skills for conveying your findings to the people. And then it's just like a really cool example of like comparing like real world data to like simulations. Like on the left is the actual image of a black hole that we took in 2017 as the world. And then this is a simulation that somebody ran of like actual light warping around a black hole as like it's swallowing gas. And then when you blur the simulation, they look pretty damn spot on, which is pretty crazy to think that you can simulate what you're seeing and like compare it, and it looks that close to the reality, which is pretty cool. So the ideal like standard is to be able to have your theoretical predictions match your observations like perfectly. That's the dream, right? So this is a really cool example of how data analysis plus some instrumentation plus some simulation and theory all comes together to kind of make these huge results and claims like this is a black hole. We for sure observed the black hole. We compared it to our models and it is like dead spot on. That's pretty cool. You could say that we've officially seen a black hole. Pretty cool. And then can anybody guess what we used to write the last step? LaTeX on Overleaf. Yeah. And it's like Google Docs. So like everybody can, like all your collaborators that you're writing your paper with can also access the same document and edit it. So using LaTeX to write your CV / your or like your CV and like your proposals is good practice for you to start writing research papers if you ever want to do that. So I really highly recommend doing the CV assignment as well, just to make sure that you are building up your LaTeX skills. Is there any questions so far? Okay. So we just wanted to share some examples of like research in our staff. A lot of us, like Berkeley is a research oriented institution. So a lot of undergrads typically go on to do research in their undergrad. And a lot of us want to go to grad school. So research is your ticket into grad school. If you want to go do a PhD or a master's or whatever, that's typically the path you want to take. So who better to tell you about research opportunities and stuff and like what research kind of looks like example wise, than the people that are teaching you right now. So for example, this is like a 1-minute slide that I made for like some talk or whatever. But this is like kind of what my research looks like. I do 3 different sets of research in astronomy. One like stellar astrophysics, that's the observational side of it, using telescopes to take data of stars that are pulsating. And then I don't do this part specifically, but our group is like comparing like simulations, numerical simulations with that stellar code that I mentioned earlier to try and match the observational data and create good models for it. Another one might be like taking those huge simulations of the entire universe. That's the second project, and like trying to like pull out little structures inside of it and then look at like what those structures can tell us about the universe, which is pretty cool. Cosmological morphology. How is the universe like shaped basically, and all that cool stuff. And then the last one is high performance algorithms in Python. So like writing algorithms that measure cool things, writing codes and suites and stuff like that. And then I just wanted to show like a ULab project that I did my sophomore year, which you could totally do if you like listen to the simulations lecture, you could totally understand what's going on here. To like some degree. It might be hard to do it in Python because it's really slow, but it's pretty cool. You can definitely this is all stuff that you could do with the knowledge that you have in this class. But these are just some research examples that I had, and we'll talk about this in a little bit after everybody speaks. But the top 2 were I got those research opportunities through literally just cold emailing professors, and the last one was through an REU program. But we'll talk more about how to do that in a minute. So we're going to go through the instructors that have research. So Rafi's.
Yeah, so I do research similarly to James. I do research in the Filipenko group. So I don't know if you guys know, but Alex Filipenko is famous for studying supernova. So I study the HST images we get, usually of progenitors. Progenitors means they're the stars that form the supernova. So for example, this is a really cool SN 2012AW. It's an expanding light echo, which means that the dust has interacted with the circumstellar medium and it's expanding over time. And as you can see, the pictures are, I believe, from 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2022. So as time goes on, the dust expands and the progenitor, which is the bright spot, goes away. But it's highly interesting geometry. And that's just an example of what I do. Additionally, I work on variable stars, doing photometry and using MESA, like James mentioned, to do simulations of these variable stars to try to understand how their properties like period and luminosity work, basically. So yeah, that's my research. Oh.
Okay, yeah. So I kind of am split between 2 kind of fields. But I'll kind of go over the one that I've been working on the longest first. So that's an opportunity or research that I started doing through URAP, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But basically, it's this really great program. You apply through the school's website, and it pairs you up, or you apply to a project and then you get a project. So I'm working with a cell perlmutter group. So if any of you know that name, it's basically someone who got the Nobel Prize in physics. So I was like, I'm going to apply to that. I'm going to do that. And I got it, which was awesome. So we're basically locating historical type 1a supernova. So we're basically doing image processing. So supernova aren't visible in the sky for indefinite amounts of time. So we're looking at historical images, and from using astrometric calibration metadata, we're able to extract the coordinates of the supernova from those historical images. Because some of the coordinates are actually messed up in the literature. So we're trying to correct those errors. And then another research experience that I did was an REU program at the University of Alabama in Huntsville, and also through the Marshall Space Flight Center. So that was a solar physics research experience, which is kind of, you know, it's very like large scale, like cosmology to very local, you know, solar physics. And that was basically looking at like magnetic field data from the sun and using those different properties to be able to predict when solar flares and other potentially dangerous events are going to occur. And what I found is actually the position of those active regions on the sun actually influences our measurements. So there's actually this correction factor that has to be taken into account. So it's really cool. This is actually going to be used in NASA's code for determining where, like whether it's safe for astronauts to spacewalk and stuff. So pretty exciting that it's actually, you know, the research that we do can actually, you know, be used for real world stuff. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. Cool.
All right, so I also did an REU program. Mine was at RIT, which is in Rochester. Sadly, I lost all of my code. So this picture on the left is just like one that I found on Google, but it's pretty similar to what I was making for them. Fabry-Perot spectrometer is pretty similar to like diffraction grading, if you know what that is, if you want to look it up and learn some more about it. And right now, I just started working on a new project at N3AS here in Berkeley for measuring neutrino mass using machine learning. So yeah, we covered that in class, right? And this plot here is just a pretty basic idea of like how this autoencoder is separating the different types of data that we're putting into it. So right now it's just very basic data set called the MNIST data set, which is just like a big group of pictures of numbers. So like the purple regions are lower numbers like 0 and 1, and the yellow regions are like 8 and 9. So you can see how the autoencoder is like putting the different numbers in different spaces to like differentiate them basically. And once I start tweaking that a little bit more, then I'm going to use actual astro data. Yeah, that's it for now.
We'll cover machine learning though in a lecture too. So stay tuned. It's like teaching a computer how to teach itself. I think there's
Yeah, so oh my God. Sorry if I'm gonna try to be loud, but I kind of lost my voice yesterday, so a little bit. But yeah, so the kind of stuff I've done might be a little bit different from like the previous couple of projects and experiences you've heard about. And it's mainly because I've still been trying to figure out what I want to do. I'm still a freshman, so like yeah, kind of stuck in between a lot of different things. My first like research experience and also my first time like using Python in the kind of context that, you know, we've been like doing in this class was way back in high school. I like emailed Professor Jian Ge from the University of Florida, and he was like super interested in applying computing to astrophysics and specifically to things like, you know, exoplanets and stellar systems and stuff. And I thought that was pretty cool. So I worked with some guidance for him, but like the thing I did was using deep neural networks to search for smaller, longer period exoplanets. So, you know, like how the Earth takes, you know, 365 days-ish to orbit the sun. We were looking for planets that had periods of about like 100 to 200 to, and then later like 300, 400 to 500 even day orbits. Those tend to be, you know, like smaller planets, rocky, kind of like the Earth maybe. We were looking around stars that were like the sun and stuff. So to start off, like a lot of the things that you saw into like resources sheet was all stuff I like encountered while doing that stuff and found pretty useful. Like up there, those plots there, it was just one giant Jupyter notebook full of code to like normalize light curves, like data from the Kepler telescope and stuff. So that was that. Flowchart for neural network design. Like we like process this light curve data, fold it hella, normalize it again, and then we tried to like automate this process because it's massive and takes forever. And like to the point where we were running these folding operations on like the cluster GPUs and stuff. It was kind of whack. So that was nice. We found these 2 candidates for exoplanets. I think the Zoom might be hiding one of them, but like in the end, this is what I was able to like publish basically. Planet on the left, or Planet Canada on the left. Like it was just like we were looking for transit crossing events, and then like trying to filter down ones that seemed like definitely possible and ones that were like very much unlikely. So these like candidate events, one I think was a period of like 190 days and the other is like 130-ish or something like that. But that was like us just trying to statistically determine if they were probable. That was pretty fun, but also taught me that like very coding heavy research projects were definitely not my thing. I realized I did not enjoy that process much. So all the research I've been doing recently has all the instrumentation. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, like let me know. Last semester I worked on GNOME with URAP in the physics department. GNOME is global network of optical magnetometers for detecting exotic physics. It's some like acronym like that that doesn't actually fit. It's fine. But yeah, the idea was we have like, stations like this. It's a old atomic magnetometer. There's like 12 of these all around the world. And they're searching for like axion fields. It's a hypothetical. It was a thing that was like bodged in to solve some problem in quantum electrodynamics that kind of also got bodged in as a possible dark matter candidate. So we were searching for those. My research was just playing with lasers. It was just fun. Yeah, if you notice like these blocks here, those are all just like there's a laser in there. You have a pump, a probe laser. There's like a cell in the middle. That's really what does the magnetometer part of that whole detector. So yeah, pain, collimating lasers, lots and lots of optics. And what I work on now, probably at least for the next few years, is I work at SSL, which is Space Systems Lab. It's like up the hill above Lawrence. I work on the COSY mission, which is Compton like spectrometer imager, Compton spectrometer, spectroscopic imager or something. I love acronyms. What I do for them, I've noticed I'm a lot more on the engineering side. Usually, so I like building shit, I like designing shit. I currently do electronics for this. It's basically going to be a competent telescope to look for gamma rays in space. So hopefully in a couple of years, this thing will fly on a satellite in low Earth orbit and, like look at gamma ray emissions from things like supernovae, look for trace of nucleosynthesis, black hole mergers, and just like multi-messenger astronomy stuff. Really pretty cool. Yeah, that picture on the right there is like a board that from like our current project with thing like it flew on a weather balloon, flew on a high altitude balloon several years back, and we're basically turning that into a satellite. So that's what I do. It's maybe a little unconventional, at least for like an Astro Python DeCal, but yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, so that was just like a little brief view at like the range of research that like you could get into. All of these research opportunities are gotten either through cold emailing people or applying for programs and all sorts of good stuff. And we'll talk about that in just a minute and give you some advice on how to do that. So like I said, research can look like instrumentation, like what Claire does. It could look like theory, like running simulations. It could look like taking data with telescopes. If you're outside of the field of astronomy, that might be working in a lab, taking data like in a small lab. That might be working in giant collaborations. That might be trying to find trends from public data like Google, like just downloading giant data sets and trying to learn new things about it. It really is like the world is your oyster. And a couple of these projects mentioned something called machine learning. We'll talk about that in the next couple lectures before the end of the semester. It's a really cool topic. It's like how Tesla cars drive autonomously. It's, like I said, teaching a computer how to teach itself how to do something, which is pretty cool. We'll talk about it a little bit. And Python is the language of choice for most people to do machine learning. So you're already kind of like step in the door if you want to learn how to do that. Which is pretty cool. So some cool tips and tricks for applying for research. I like to call this the art of a cold email. A lot of people don't know how to write like nice, like effective cold emails. This is typically why people get so many rejection letters, at least in my book. So if you follow these kind of guidelines, I think you'll be pretty well off, especially considering all of you are taking the DeCal. Hopefully you'll write your CV, you'll have a website, and it'll make you stand out. So my first bullet point is personalized, not generic. Do not write generic emails and broadcast that shit to 20 people. They can tell it's bad, they can tell it's generic, and why would they care? Why would they want to work with you if you don't take the time to even at least look into them and write a personalized email? To me, if I was like in their shoes, I would see that as an immediate turnoff to working with you. So personalized is the name of the game. You want to show that you care about their research, you find it interesting, and you're willing to work with them. So how do you personalize your email? Do your research. Look deeper into the surface, more like deeper past just the surface of the person. So there's a difference between going to Berkeley researchers or faculty on the astronomy page and looking at a professor's name and saying, research interests. Oh, it sounds like they like stars that explode. Cool. That's the email. That's not enough. Like, you want to show them that you care. So what you should do is look up their name on those archive NASA ADS platforms for looking at papers. Try to find a research paper that sounds cool to you. That's the biggest thing. You want to find, if you can't find a single paper that sounds cool to you, chances are they're probably not a good fit for you. But if you can find a research paper that you think that person you think is really interesting, I encourage you to read it. But don't read it like fully. It's going to be like a 20 or 30 page awful thing to read. Just read like the title and like the paragraph at the top, maybe the intro if you really feel ambitious, and then like look at the pictures or the conclusion, and like that's all you need to know. And find like maybe one question that shows that you're like interested in it, and ask that advisor via email, I have this question about your paper. I would really love to sit down and chat with you. If they say yes to chatting with you, you pretty much have like an 80% chance of just already being in the group. Like, I'm almost certain of it. If they're willing to take the time to answer a question you have about their research paper, that's huge. It's like a big gesture of flattery already, to like for you to take the time to read a paper that they might not have thought many people would ever read in the world anyway. So these are really important things to customize. And you say all these things in your email. You know, you don't want to be like a total kiss ass. You don't want to say, I think you're the coolest person there's ever been in this entire world. That's like, get away from me, soccer mode. But if you say, I thought your paper was really interesting on this topic and I want to learn more about it, would you be willing to chat? That is money. That is good. You want to have that in a cold email. Emailing postdocs, not professors. Typically, you don't want to email professors because they just won't have time to work with you. Like, you can get an advisor that is a professor. Most of the time, you'll have an overarching advisor that is a professor because they run research groups. But that's kind of what they do now. Like, when they're like a professor, a full professor, they're not doing real research anymore. They are running people's lives that do the research for them. So that's people like postdocs, that's graduate students, that's you guys, that's undergrads. Their kind of role in academia as like the coders that do research is kind of coming to an end. They're like the administration people now. I hate to say that, it's like kind of lame, but postdocs are at the peak of their game. They just got their PhD. They're like experts in their field. They still know how to code in Python, and they have lots of time because they're trying to become a professor. So they're just like doing whatever they can to make a big impact on the field. That typically leads to really cool research projects that are cutting edge. You want to work with postdocs, not professors, at least in my opinion. Go ahead. Yeah. That's on the Berkeley or like on, if you go to like any like web page that has like a department, astrophysics or whatever, you go to like people, usually there's postdocs there. And typically postdocs, like I said, are on the peak of their game. They're trying to get hired as professors. So what do you do to get hired as a professor? They have personal websites, they have CVs, they do outreach. Typically these people are like superhuman. If you stick around for a few minutes, I could probably show at the end of this lecture what a postdoc's website might look like. But typically these people have really cool research projects and have lots of time to mentor you. Another big issue when you have a professor as a mentor is they just don't have time for you. They might be able to schedule like 1 hour a week during a group meeting with you, probably. But like the sad truth is we're undergrads, like they have like $1 million proposals they're writing, especially at a place like Berkeley. it's crazy to get their time and attention. But postdocs are the people to go to. So
Big chunk of this is done by postdocs.
exactly.
So if you're trying to figure out
Yeah. So that's another piece of advice. So cold emailing postdocs with papers that they've read, they only have like 10 papers tops, probably. They're not like, they don't have thousands or something crazy like that, because they're still trying to get a professorship. And then lastly, make their life as easy as possible. The last thing they want to do is have to go digging to learn about you. So when you send that email, you should, one, flex that website if you've made it. That's a really easy way. If you have like Google has, or Gmail has this really cool thing where you can like have a customized header at the bottom of your email. And if you just have your website linked down there and they're like, oh, there's a website, let me click on that. And then boom, they see everything about you. Super helpful. I think it really does make a difference, even in a cold email. And then also you should link your CV, your curriculum vitae, which should be written in LaTeX, right? We learned that. And then your academic unofficial transcript. So you don't need to pay money to get a real transcript or anything. That's way overkill. All you need is just like go to Cal Central and like get your unofficial thing. It's like free. You just print it just so that they can see your grades. That's all they want. Like they want to know, one, like it's not a deal breaker if you don't have great grades. They just want to see what classes you've taken. Like if you are a freshman that has taken like literally only breadth classes and you haven't taken a single physics class, they probably can't work with you because you haven't even taken mechanics yet. But if you've taken like a couple physics classes, then they would feel a lot more confident taking you on. Or they might tell you, wait one semester or 2 semesters, then email me back. And I think you'll be ready by then. This usually isn't something that's like, they like absolutely will like deal break. Like nobody will be like, I won't work with you if you don't have above a 3.5 or something. Like, that's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. But they just want to make sure that you have the requisite knowledge to get into the topic. So keep that in mind. We're about to go over, but yeah, link your CV and your unofficial transcript to help them out so they don't have to go digging. Yeah, and then like you could take like, if you really wanted to, you could say what classes you're like really interested in stuff or what your research interests are, but try to keep it like short, concise, and sweet. That's my advice on that. And then lastly, I just want to say like there's lots of opportunities every single semester to get research. ULab is a really good entry level if you still feel really unconfident with like coding and whatnot, and you feel like you're not really ready to take that leap to just like make an application or cold email somebody, which I really recommend you do. I think everybody here is ready for that. But if you want to try, ULab is a really cool program. I did it my sophomore year, and it's like all student run. So your advisor is another undergrad. So you're not working with a postdoc, which means you're not going to get a letter of rec out of it, which is like the ticket into grad school for a lot of people. But it does build a lot of really useful skills. So that's a cool thing. And it's like typically everybody who applies gets in, I think. So that's a really low stakes application. URAP is a lot more competitive, but you do get paired with like really cool faculty that are like at the top of their game. Again, they're not really like, they're not going to have the most time to spend with you. You'll probably be working with postdocs a lot of your time, but it's still a good thing to do. A cold emailing, like I said, research fairs are offered like every semester, like 1 to 2 times a semester. So keep an eye out on your emailing lists. REUs are really competitive, like as competitive as grad school. So don't get discouraged if you apply for one and it doesn't work out. But these are really cool paid summer research programs. Again, like URAP was also paid, but REUs are like you get $6,000 for the semester and you get to go stay at a university and work with the faculty or whatever, which is pretty cool. And then get on those emailing lists. So like get on the physics emailing list, the astro emailing list, and they will be blasting out opportunities. But yeah, that's everything I have to say. Sorry for going a little over. Is there any questions before we end? Okay, really quickly before y'all head out, I just wanted to show the postdoc question. If you just go to like Berkeley, I don't know, Berkeley Astronomy, you just go to their website, click on the link, you go to people, there's postdocs, and you can go to any one of these people. Sometimes they have theoretical interests, but typically, like, for example, this person, Ja Lu, if you just Google them, like typically they have a website that they just didn't take the time to link on this page. yeah, so like there's a lot of stuff. Maybe if we go Jalu astronomy. Yeah. If you like put like astronomy afterwards, then you go to their website, you can see what they look like. This is their research. They have appointments, education, all that cool stuff. You can go to their like talks that they've given. Typically they have YouTube links to them. You can watch a talk if you don't want to read a whole research paper, public data, etc. And then they typically have like students they've taught. I just happen to be one of them. This is one of my advisors. That's why I knew that name. But regardless, and you can like look at all the papers that they've done. They have links to their archives and all that stuff. If you wanted to look at the research papers, any one of these, if you find one that looks cool or sounds cool, one of them is like literally like ray tracing in a simulation of the entire universe. If you think that's cool, like that's like what she does, which is pretty sick. But anyway, that's kind of like a process, and just going through like reading people's research interests and what they do. If it sounds cool to you, then like you should totally send them an email. Taking the time to go to their website, read a research paper or two that like you find interesting, surefire ticket in. Personalized emails are the name of the game. But anyway, I don't want to take any more of your time. Have a good one, everybody, and I will see everybody on Wednesday.